everyone, and welcome back to an episode of the JoyPad podcast. It is Thump Day. It is recording day. I didn't say greetings of the day. Oh well.
Missed opportunity.
You
Yeah,
just did.
there it was. I am one of four hosts. I am Mike Pinto, and I'm going to talk about my beverage before I pass along to someone else. Tonight am drinking only the finest dew harvested from the clearest mountaintops, Mountain Dew. And oh, look at that, just terrible, unnatural color flowing out. It's delicious. Anyways, I'm going to pass it to Megan. What are you drinking? How are you feeling? What have you been playing? Etc.
What am I drinking? I have the finest Aquafina bottled water, some type of water, or leaf water that I drink typically. Anyway, I decided to jump back into Hotline Miami. The Last of Us 2 really made me want to play it because there's a nice little scene where the character is playing the game on a PlayStation Vita, which I think is a nice little touch. It's a fun game. I haven't played it in a while. Super violent for like a top-down, like pixelated graphic style game. Yeah, I enjoy it. I'm feeling pretty okay, feeling better, back into gaming. So, yeah, that's what I have going on. Tom, how are you doing? What are you drinking? What are you playing?
Oh, thanks. I'm doing just dandy. I'm drinking the same thing I'm drinking every time we record this podcast,
7 million
which is
energy drinks.
yet another Rain Total Body Fuel. I've actually cut down on my energy drink consumption, so this is, I think, the first energy drink I've had all week. It's mostly
Wow.
been coffee for me when I've needed it. I have not been doing super well. I'm a little bit under the weather. I am full of mucus, which is just wonderful.
That's hot.
Um, but that's part of why I'm not having so many energy drinks. Um, I haven't been playing all that much, to be honest, just because over the holiday weekend I did get a little bit sick and I ended up sleeping for a whole day. But I've been playing a little bit of Rocket League with Fleming and Pinto, some War Thunder, and I actually played a little bit of Tricky Towers for the first time
Ooh.
the other day. I saw it on YouTube and thought, oh, this looks interesting. I'll give it a shot. It's like $5 on Steam. I think it even had a Steam sale deal. And that was fun. It's kind of Tetris, but you actually have to balance things instead of letting them be able to hang out on a limb on their own. And it takes a lot of reorienting your own perception to balance, because you'll find yourself still expecting things to actually land Tetris style, and then everything will fall over and screw up your game. So that's funny. And I actually purchased a bundle of grand strategy games, so Hearts of Iron 4, Imperator Rome, Europa Universalis 4, and Stellaris. I've played approximately 10 minutes of Hearts of Iron 4, at which point I looked at the screen and went, what is happening here? I have no idea how to play this game. And then had to go do something else. So I still don't know how to play said game. But that's primarily been it. My wife and I are still playing through. I forget the name of the game right now.
The Outer Worlds.
Outer Worlds.
The Outer Worlds. Thank you. I'm glad everyone remembers because it's what I've been playing for the last like month and a half. But we didn't really make any significant progress this weekend just because the text is so tiny.
Yeah.
Can we have a minute to talk about that?
It's
Tiny text in games, even on big TVs, hurts my head.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
So anyway, that's it for me. As usual, I've rambled on way too long. Mr. Mike Fleming, how are you doing? What are you drinking? What are you playing? How is the world today in this world today?
The world is good. I am good. I'm a little nervous though. I am actually drinking a Samuel Adams Oktoberfest. And to give everyone context, it is currently July 9th of 2020. And I probably bought this like October of last year. I found it in the back of my fridge. I haven't tried it yet. So we're going to have a test sip live. it's a little bit I don't even know how to describe it.
Spectacular.
Not good.
Octobery.
It's
It's a
it's
little
weird for
last
July.
year.
Yeah, it tastes like 2019. Let's
Tastes
just
like
leave
it
it at
was
that.
bottled in air that never felt the sweet embrace of COVID-19.
Oh boy.
That's true. This definitely doesn't have the Rona
Pre-COVID, baby.
demonetized on YouTube. But yeah, I have that. I'm actually the thirsty boy tonight. I've got some leaf tea and some sparkling water and some regular water as well, if I need to dip into that. So I've got a lot of beverages, and I've also been playing a lot of games actually. So Pinto failed to mention that we just finished A Way Out this past weekend. Not gonna lie, I got a little bit teary-eyed. It's definitely a hard game to get through. Won't spoil it because I know Tom, you're interested now in playing it.
We both got very upset though.
Yeah, we both got very upset. I definitely it impacted me quite a bit. So we just finished that. We actually recorded it, so people that hear this podcast look on our YouTube channel. It should be there around the time that someone listens to this, I assume. We'll see, but it should be posted there at some point. I've also been playing Hearts of Iron 4 as well as Tom did, but longer than 10 minutes. I mentioned that, I don't know if I mentioned on the podcast, but the game is a grand strategy game, which in a paradox game, which in particular is a very complicated game. People watch like hours of tutorials, and computers, the way they play, the AI plays it really strange. So I was like, you know what? I don't want to touch this game. But then I realized and remembered one of the great things about paradox games is there's a lot of mods. So I actually installed the Great War mod, which allows me to play 1914, or you start 1910 and you go actually all the way through World War II. They basically extended the game through this mod. Yeah, really cool. Tom, I would definitely recommend you check that out. Makes the game really interesting. The only downside is that like your movement of territory during war doesn't change much. You're just sitting there watching effectively nothing and waiting till people get beaten down in the first couple of years of the Great War. But really interesting. And I have been playing Rocket League as well. I've been playing a lot of Rocket League actually. Definitely been like loving that game recently. So good for me. But anyway, I think that's everything I've been doing. So Pinto, back to you. What have you been playing aside from A Way Out? You didn't mention yet.
That's right. We played A Way Out. Megan and I went back to The Last of Us 1.
Oh yeah, we did.
That was funny because Megan took the first shift on our last recording session, which we discovered that even though The Last of Us 2 plays very similar to The Last of Us 1, it's much more refined.
Yeah,
because
like,
Megan
The Last
was
of Us
like,
is so clunky.
Yeah, Megan was like, this is so clunky. I hate this. Why isn't this working?
I got so mad.
Yeah, she died probably about 4 times. Unfortunately, that video footage is corrupted, so you won't get to see Angry Megan. We'll have to do that over.
Maybe at some point.
What?
I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
You know, corrupt footage is like the worst thing. It's like a content creator's nightmare.
Yeah, it sounds like she was talking to me from 20 feet away through like a sheen of water. I don't know what happened to the audio.
Social
Are you sure she wasn't?
Maybe. She sounded fine
know my life.
initially.
Yeah. I often like to speak through sheens of water. I understand.
What else have we been playing besides that? I am still on the War Thunder train, much more than Fleming and Tom are, who have switched their allegiances back to Rocket League. And what else? Of course, Song of Horror. God, like it's a scary game, but it's very slow paced and it's very atmospheric. So it's interesting. Although when your characters die, you get really upset because there's permadeath.
Ooh.
So you get to choose from a pool of like 3 or 4 characters, and then you mess up and you get someone killed, and you're like, oh, no, I didn't want that to happen. Like my first character I mentioned in the first episode, I made her fall out a window by mistake. That sucked.
God.
Is it? Oops, sorry.
You fool.
Go ahead, Megan.
Is it like in the same way as like Heavy Rain, where it changes the story, or you can still continue and have the same story regardless of what character you're playing with.
You still continue playing and have the same story regardless.
Okay,
There's only one main character who you cannot get killed.
got it.
Like, and if you happen to get all the characters killed, you just have to start the episode over completely.
Okay.
And then Breath of Fire 3 I've also been playing, which is just such a delightful game. But
Did you touch
Mm-hmm.
any Stardew Valley?
I have
Is that
not
new?
yet. It's been quite a while since I played Stardew Valley, though Megan recently shared that the creator is working on a new patch for
Yeah.
a lot of new
Oh my
endgame
gosh.
content, and I am super excited for that whenever that happens.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up. I saw that too and was like, I'm so excited for that to come out.
I did mention, I said I kind of hope it's gonna be like a little while because I've finally broken my Stardew addiction for now.
Yeah, I definitely get that. The one nice thing though is he's never like introduced like skins or other things that you can like have to purchase. Like people
Oh,
have
yeah.
the game, but you don't have like extra stuff like that.
Microtransactions,
Yeah, a
yeah.
lot of
Mhm.
microtransactions to keep the game going, which is really nice of them.
And I'm sure he
I'll-
could sell it too.
Oh yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Because
I'll
people
be
mod that game
extremely-
all the time.
I'll be extremely happy if it were just an update that changed corn juice to whiskey. That's all I want. That's all I want.
Not even potatoes to vodka.
He's also going to
would
be
like
adding
that.
bananas. I don't know if you guys saw.
I
did
Yeah,
see
He's
that.
going to be putting bananas in.
People
so,
voted on that, on
Yeah.
which fruit tree should be the next to go in.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Banana. So it is my turn to bring up the main topic of conversation this episode. And I kind of wanted for all of us to take a little bit of a step out of the comfort of our homes because I want to talk about arcade games this week.
Ooh.
Whoa.
Because, man, like, we're all around the same age, 30. We kind of didn't live through the boom era of arcades.
Yeah.
We came around at, like, when arcades were kind of starting to die off. But, man, I loved arcades when I was younger, and I still love them now. It's just, you can't find them anywhere. Because back when arcades were super popular, they were on the cutting edge of technology. Games came out in arcades first before they got ported to home consoles. Now it's like, if someone wants to have an arcade cabinet, it's like, well, just buy a PS5 or a PS4, put it in there, and build an arcade cabinet around it, almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's,
I love a good arcade.
I know, there's so many games that I play in arcades that are just, like, embedded in my memory. The House of the Dead trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Any game that had gun peripherals, basically.
Yes.
Well, and that's
Well,
what I was gonna say. So there are still arcades, but they typically have other things associated to them, like
Right.
it's
Skee-ball.
yeah. Well, it's like sport kind of games like that, or like
Mhm.
the arcade is like secondary to the other things, like
In
at
a movie
a Dave and
theater.
Buster's.
Yeah.
A Dave and
Yeah.
Buster's, for example, makes most of their money through their alcohol sales, which is the parents that are sitting there letting their kids play while they're drinking around that, like
Right.
that bar or whatever.
And driving their children home. Way to go,
yeah.
parents.
Well,
Even the
I'm
games-
just saying that's the kind of thing that you see now.
Yeah, and those games they're ticket-based games. Like they're
Yeah.
not the same. I mean, yeah, you might find the games that we played as kids growing up, but
I think, and maybe you guys will agree with me, maybe not, but I think the best arcade games were the ones that had a semi-realistic peripheral. So, for example, the gun peripherals, House
Time
of the Dead,
Crisis.
Time Crisis.
yeah.
My favorite, Silent Scope.
remember
It's
that.
been
Okay.
it's been my dream as an adult since before I was an adult to own a Silent Scope 2 machine.
I actually
because
know
I
someone
love-
that owns one. That's
Oh.
funny you say that. Yeah,
I want
I don't
one.
know if he still does, but he used to own one.
But like even the driving games too, right?
Cruising USA.
Yeah.
Oh,
Those are the kind of games though that are the ones you'd find like that still would do well at those arcades. The biggest problem is one, they have a massive footprint. You
Yep.
know, there are huge games. Like think those driving games that have the full like stick and you're sitting in something, or even worse, like the old Star Wars, I think it was called Rogue Squadron machine, where it was like you're
Yeah.
basically sitting in a TIE fighter looking thing or something like that. Those have a massive footprint for the stores. So like when you think about it, kids that are there that are playing through the game, one kid, maybe two, depending on the game, like a Time Crisis, can play at a time. So that's not a lot of kids you can get in that space. So I understand why, in that regard, those games just didn't work. But those, from my perspective, are the ones that you wouldn't have in your house. You can't afford that kind of space.
The thing though too with an arcade and even home use of like an arcade machine is also the maintenance.
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
every machine has a different maintenance protocol.
Yeah.
And every machine has different peripherals. So unless you have one person that's very highly skilled in maintaining all of those different machines, you're almost bound to encounter an issue where something's going to break, and you need to fix it, and the maintenance cost is eventually going to exceed the lifetime value of the machine.
Yeah.
So I understand where that makes it a difficult kind of situation to own and maintain that sort of thing too. But they're just so fun. They're so different from like a controller experience,
And I think the other thing too is there are certain games, like a lot of the games, well, almost all arcade games were designed to try and make money. They were super hard by design, so you would keep pumping quarters into them. Like some of my favorites are the old like side-scrolling beat 'em ups, like the Simpsons game or the X-Men game.
Oh
And
yeah.
I bought
Yeah.
those years ago for my PlayStation 3. You can play them online on PS3 and have just random people jump in and play. But because you're not pumping quarters into it, it doesn't feel the same. Also, you're playing with random people online. You're not like playing with some stranger who like you get to high five when you beat the game and suddenly you're best friends and you go eat pizza together. I'm not speaking from experience or anything.
It takes some of the element of the weight of your win or loss,
Your
out of it,
accomplishment.
too.
Yeah, it's like
'Cause,
I beat this game in $2.
Yeah. Well, part of it was like when you would go to the arcade, you have a specific amount of money with you. It's almost like going to the casino. You have a certain amount of money that you're gonna go in and lose, right?
Yeah.
And I specifically remember like getting a number of tokens, and I remember playing the X-Men game with my dad at a family. I think it was called Family Grand Prix in Reading. And we played the crap out of it. We didn't really get super far because we were still trying to figure it out as we played too, because the other element of an arcade is you don't own the game. It's probably months between the last time you've played the game, unless you're showing up every day. So you're relearning it every time, which means you suck every time you play it unless you're there all the time. So we're just feeding the machine quarters and having a great time. But once you're out of quarters, you're out of quarters.
Yeah. Well, they've started to
had
introduce. Sorry, Tom. They started to introduce like hourly passes or something like that, where as soon as you enter it, all their systems are connected, all their games. So like you open up at 8 p.m., you're going to be able to play any game till 9 p.m. And as soon as you hit that point, when you try to rescan, like if you die or something, you can't play any longer.
Yeah, there's an arcade in our state called Timeline. It's what, 3 hours from us, Pinto?
Was it? It was about 3 hours.
3 or 4 hours. But Timeline, same thing. You purchase essentially a card, and you can buy an hour, or you can buy a whole day, where you just go and slide the card, which I think is great.
That's fun, but what stops someone from just sitting at the same machine for a full hour?
Absolutely
Well, and
nothing.
that's the whole point that I was talking about with the footprint. Like if you like, for example, I remember the last time I really remember arcades as a whole being very popular was probably around like the Dance Dance Revolution time frame.
I was pretty
those
dope
used to
at
be
that
everywhere.
game, man.
Well, but that, like, the nice thing about that was that it enticed people to watch and go into the arcade. They would put that, like, I know Park City Mall. I don't care. I'll tell people basically the mall I go to. But that mall, years and years ago, it had
When we were
it has
still
an
in
arcade.
college.
Well, no, I mean I still have gone there once in a while, but they had an arcade on the like right next to the food court, which is I think where the arcades do best because then people would be sitting there, they'd be having their cheeseburger from Burger King or whatever they would eat, and they would look over and Dance Dance Revolution was right at the front. You walk like you take 2 steps inside and there's a group of people watching other people play. And I remember that when I was younger, and being out this way, I would see people that are just like playing and I would just like watch them and then want to walk over to the arcade. Even if I didn't want to play that, I would go in and play maybe another game that was in there, like the shoot 'em games or something. So that kind of game from my recollection was really like the last gasp before they've started to go down. And you've seen that like even big companies have given up on them. So a couple of years ago now, it probably was like 2013. I might be off on the exact timing, but somewhere around there. Disney World at their now called Disney Springs Resort, so we'll just call it Disney Springs. They had a place called Disney Arcade. Oh God, it was something like that. I forget. It'll come back to me at some point. But they had like an arcade there where they had a lot of cool like pre-virtual reality kind of games, and they shut that down because it wasn't doing very
Oh,
well
wow.
anymore. And they shut them down in I think they were trying to like put them up in different places years before that. So like they had one I think in Chicago, which they shut down a few years prior. So even the one in Disney World, where like everybody's going to be willing to spend money on stupid stuff, especially when they're in like a shopping mall area, they just closed it down. They said, no, it's not working for us anymore. And they just shut it down. You're seeing all of those kind of things close. I'm sure the one at the Park City Mall, if it's still there, is closed at this point.
It's funny you say that, and I know you mentioned earlier about Dave and Buster's.
Yeah.
I think realistically, we're at the very least seeing the standalone arcades start to struggle.
Oh, yeah.
I think the models of the Dave and Buster's succeed a little bit more because they offer the restaurant dining experience at the same
Mhm.
time. And then the arcade is more of a novelty to kind of accompany that. So you can have
Yeah.
I know for me, there was a place called The Works near my parents' house, which was a similar experience to Dave and Buster's, though just not called Dave and Buster's. And it was great. Like I think it was the second date I took my now wife on was out to the Works. We went and had dinner, and then we went and drove. They also had a go-kart track, so we did a go-kart
That's really
track,
cool.
Oh, nice.
and then played some arcade games. So it was really
Yeah.
fun.
I was gonna
Um,
say they have to arcades standalone just don't work anymore. They have to be an experience, and food and beverage, especially like alcoholic beverages, is how Dave and Buster's, for example, stays in business. You've seen, again with COVID-19, with the shutdowns that we've had, Chuck E. Cheese, I believe, has already announced multiple
Yeah.
closures, if not a full bankruptcy. And they're the other big arcade, but they focus on children.
Mhm.
They're probably not going to survive based on the fact that, let's be honest, children are dirty. Children are gross. They're going to spread germs. People aren't going to go back there very quick. So, yeah, I think that an arcade has to be the novelty and the idea of like a racetrack or something. I went to a place in Baltimore called Autobahn, which was a racetrack kind of thing. You would, ride go-karts basically in this big thing. And they had a small arcade there. It was a couple things off to the side of the racetrack. So like you could watch your friends, or if your friends were like getting their instructions or whatever, getting ready to race, you could sit there and you could play those games. And then when they finally race, you could leave them. But they're making a couple dollars there every time. And you're not likely to sit on a machine for hours and hours too, which is also helpful.
Yeah, I think it's probably the actual money, like you said, is made on the alcohol sales, and then it's just kind of like a bonus to have the machines.
Yep.
The interesting thing about the Works was, at least for a while, they even had like a period of time where they would like close the children. So like it used to be a pretty decent like teen hangout spot, because that was the thing. You're a teenager, you can't go into clubs and drinking and stuff like that, but you can go to an arcade.
Yeah.
So
You can
that's
get
one
yourself
of the
some Coca-Cola.
yeah, get some Coca-Colas and play Time Crisis.
Yep.
So that, along with like roller rinks and stuff like that, were the kind of things. There was a laser tag next door too. So different facility, but sit right next door. So, those kind of things are all right there. That's kind of hitting that demographic that's right between kind of like 12 and 18. I'd say more on the lower end of that side, honestly. But, when you add the alcohol, then you expand that audience, and you can really kind of make your money. But the games are of universal appeal, which is the great part. And I would say, even a lot of that stuff with the peripherals, the driving games, I mean, while they appeal to adults and children alike, I think those are definitely a big appeal to people who can't get a license yet, because it lets you get the actual feel of getting your hands on a steering wheel and a gas pedal and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I love it for that. I mean, I still love those kinds of games, and I will still gladly go play those kinds of games. But I wonder if, the more limited appeal compared to, something that crosses over to older folks like us who've been driving for over a decade.
I like driving.
I'll still play Cruis'n USA.
Yeah, me too.
But will you
So-
play $20 worth of Cruis'n USA?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll
Probably not $20.
I'll probably play
though.
like $5 worth of Cruis'n USA. Because don't you
Tapper
remember
for sure.
you could like hit the animals and they'd explode into meat chunks all over your windshield?
Yep.
I don't, because I'm not an awful person. Pinto.
I didn't do
My
it on
God.
purpose.
Lots
I
of
was
gear,
just a
man.
terrible driver.
Still are.
Coincidentally, Megan, I was just about to say I've only got one accident on my record. Thank you, and I've never hit an animal.
Oh, it's the same.
I want to extend the conversation a little bit to include LAN centers. They've also, went away.
In America,
most-
hell
Yeah.
yeah.
In America, yes. So it's an American podcast. It's an American thing. So in America, they've basically gone away, and I think it's because of the rise of the internet. So like, almost everybody has internet now. I know some people don't, and so, as we've talked about on the podcast, some people do not have that, but those places aren't going to have a LAN center. So you're
Yeah.
not really seeing them in America anymore. It's because people want to just play on their computer and play their own games. In fact, the LAN centers you see, LAN centers, if you will, are taking place at like big events like Comic Cons or
E3.
DreamHack, E3, thank you. Those kind of events are where you're going to see a big LAN center, because what they do is they charge you the $100 entry pass and then a $50 or like $100 LAN center pass, so you could play some games while you're there, maybe enter their tournament while you're there. But like, I remember years ago, back in like 2004, 2005, LAN centers were like huge because like internet wasn't as good then, and like you couldn't afford, the people that were playing like Counter-Strike, you couldn't afford the really nice machines. So like if you went to the LAN center, the local LAN, you would have the best possible machines and a great internet connection, and you could play with all 5 of your friends against 5 other people, and like you could wager $100 and whichever team got it wins and stuff like that. So like that stuff's just gone away now with the rise of the internet, online leagues in that case. And like you said, who really wants to spend per hour or per event or per mission like just $20-$30 when like they could just buy the console? And especially because they've gotten so cheap.
I think it's funny that you say that, because there's actually at least 1 or 2 gaming PC cafes in my neighborhood that are relatively new, and it might be because I live in a neighborhood with a high Korean population and they're more common in Korea.
Yeah.
But I don't live in Korea. I live in Texas. So
you visited Korea, and you know the situation in Korea. There's tons of them everywhere.
I spent a decent amount of time in what is known as the Pishibong, even though it sounds really weird. That's what they're called, where they have the gaming computers. And I did not have an internet connection for my first week and a half when I was living in Korea. So, I would go there and call my parents on Skype. That was what I did.
It worked.
But yeah, I mean, they had all the peripherals there. The computers were set up really nicely. All I had to do was ask the guy behind the counter for like a webcam, which I did. And I would download Skype on the computer, which was fine. Could I log into my Battle.net account? No, because it was Korean Battle.net, so it wouldn't let me. So I couldn't really take advantage of any of the gaming. But it was really interesting and really widely used. I mean, there were like teenage girls that were there. There were teenage guys that were there. There were older, older gamers, younger gamers, and they offer like food and drink the entire time you're there too, which is really cool. So, and I don't know, I think being a foreigner there, kind of, they were catering to me because they were like, "Hey, foreign guys here. That
He
means
probably has a
we're
lot of
cool."
money.
But no, they were like, "That means we're cool. So if they see him
Oh.
here, they'll bring in more people," which
You
is
should have gotten
a weird
free
kind of trend.
passes and stuff then if you're the cool guy.
No, I paid like everybody else.
Yeah, I know. So Pinto, why bring this up? Like, is there a nostalgic, event or something for you? A memorable event that like makes you think of them?
I mean, not really. A couple years ago for Megan's birthday is when we went to that place that she mentioned that I forgot the name of already.
Timeline.
Thank you. It was also on top of like a gaming store, which was
Oh, it
really
was,
cool
yeah.
because the guy there was so nice and like
He was.
they weren't busy, which was kind of a shame. Did we go on a weekend? I don't really
Yeah,
remember.
we went on a weekend, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, it was like a retro gaming shop. They sold, well, they had current gen, but the big appeal was like old cartridge games.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
the guy there was really nice and like
Mm-hmm.
we went downstairs, we were like, we need to go get food. And we just went in like after we had spent an hour and they were like, hey, like what's a good restaurant around here?
Yeah.
He was like, oh, just go around the block. There's a really good pizza place. But
Yeah.
we spent all day there, and it wasn't even like the greatest arcade, to be honest with you.
No.
But it was still a lot of fun.
And they had the essentials. They had what, Tapper?
Yep, Tapper. That's usually one of
Rampage.
my games of choice. Rampage,
Ton of pinball. A ton
lots.
of pinball.
Yeah,
It's funny you say that. I actually went to go visit a good friend of mine, Nate, out in Portland, Oregon, 2015. And one of the highlights of the trip was an arcade in Portland. And I could not tell you the name of the arcade, but it was a similar setup where they had a bunch of retro games, a couple newer games, and then upstairs was nothing but pinball.
Yeah.
And like older kind of pinball machines and some newer. But it was so much fun. And I mean, to be honest with you, it was pretty heavily utilized. Like there were a good number of people there, like on a Thursday. And younger people who were coming to spend their money at this arcade and just have a good time. So I almost wonder if the arcade's not dead and it's just kind of the mega arcade that we got a little bit more used to or saw a little bit more of in the mid 90s
Right.
kind of situation. And really, I guess how it's in the just before COVID era of the 2000s, 2020s, the situation kind of evolved to the point where it's more of either like the niche kind of hole in the wall place where it's somebody who's accrued some cabinets and some pinball machines, or it's a Dave and Buster's where they're doing the synergy of dining and gaming. Which is almost, I mean, thinking about it right now, it's almost like what a casino is, right? Except that they're making way more money on the games.
Yeah, they're making they make most of their money, casinos from my understanding, on the beverages and the like too. But the thing there is that they're guaranteed effectively to not lose money on those machines. So they do much better. It's funny, we're almost getting into like a business kind of conversation. And I was going to ask you guys from a business perspective if you think that, so I think we all agree that the way they're actually going to make their money is through food and beverages and the like. So they need to have some kind of restaurant. But do you guys think almost like a gym membership kind of thing would be more effective for an arcade? I'll say arcade, but we've talked other things. Like obviously the food and stuff wouldn't be included. Maybe you get a 10% discount. I don't know, I'm making something up, but it's a way to get people to not feel discomfort with the cost of games. And also if people don't come in like a gym, you're making your money that way.
Yeah, I think, sorry.
I just wanted to say that I think the problem with that I would see is that you would have to constantly be either rotating your stock or getting new games in consistently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
or have something that people will just continue to come back to.
Yeah.
Which I think there was an option like that at that arcade I went to in Portland. Which was not, I think they had like a drink bar or something and maybe some light snacks, but they weren't heavy on the food option, or I think they had a bar, like a relatively light bar, but they weren't heavy on sales that way. So I think they were more focused towards the games, and probably they were trying to seek that, but they also had some of the more competitive games, and they had a lot of the pinball and stuff like that. So I don't know. I'm trying to scratch my brain for like something that I would see as a game that people are going to keep coming back to like try and beat their high score, or that just offers that kind of continuous experience where you kind of need to keep playing it every day, or that would remember you or something like that.
I had a pretty cool experience last year. I went to Savannah to see one of my friends, and she took me to this local like bar restaurant place called Chromatic Dragon, and it was a video game board game restaurant. So you would go in, you would decide, do you want to play board games, video games, and they had just flat screen TVs all along the one wall, and in the back they had a huge like table with a projector screen, and they had the Wii U, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and then they had a catalog of games that you can choose from. So you could sit there, drink, eat food, buy appetizers, and sit there and play current gen games or prior. And it was a lot of fun. Like, it was a huge, like, I can see places doing more of that now with greater appeal,
we have a restaurant like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which you see things like that cropping up more and more, which I think is kind of taking the place of the arcade of our days, because like you said, Fleming, it's a huge footprint. Like, you're not you have this giant game there, the maintenance is insane. It just doesn't make sense to have something like that around. Yes, nostalgia, that's great, but I think something like this would do better now in today's market, because you would have a rotating stock of games.
And I also think people would balk at, like, in terms of inflation, we should be paying more for arcade games if arcades were to be a thing. But if you go to an arcade and it's like,
$1
people,
a time.
people are still like, $1 for a life. I don't want to do that. It's like, dude, like, that's nothing, really.
Well, there's even a local place.
Can I offer my experience with the biggest ripoff arcade game of all time, which is the arcade version of Guitar Hero?
Yeah.
That charges like $3
Yeah.
per song play.
Yep.
Yeah. And if you fail, there's no like givesies backsies.
No.
You just failed that song and your $3 is gone.
So don't try to play through the fire and flames, right?
I think there was some sort of exclusive Steve Vai song that I thought was really cool, and I tried to play it on expert and like failed at some point because I didn't really know the song.
I think the whole idea behind Guitar Hero in arcades was just to have, like, that big dick energy, where you were literally there just to show off, like, because everyone had Guitar Hero at home. So if you were like a pro home player, you're going to go to the arcade to show off. It's not like DDR, where I had DDR pads at home. I was that kid. I'm Asian. What do you want from me? But like, most people that, sure, you would always have those people that were super good at DDR, but most people that went and played it were like middling or amateur. You did have the people that were super good and showed off, but that was the kind of game that for a long time you could only play in arcades until they started making dance pads that you could buy at home. Not like Guitar Hero, where I'm pretty sure the arcade versions came out far after the console versions, most likely.
Yeah.
I would love to play Taiko Drum Master in an arcade with that giant drum.
I would too.
Have you not?
I've played it, the home version. I have like the mini drum.
Let me tell you my favorite game at the works, which is Taiko Drum Master with the giant drum there.
I'm so jealous.
Oh my god, it's so much fun.
I love Taiko.
I love like any game with a cool different peripheral.
Yeah.
Really works out.
Top Skater.
Oh my God. All right. Let me tell you what game doesn't work out.
But you still want to play it, and
I
you'll
do.
play it multiple times.
Because it looks awesome.
It does.
Do you guys remember I don't know what they would be called, so I'm just gonna say like a motocross or something where you would have like a line of motorcycles that would actually
Yes.
like bend over for your
Yeah.
turns and
Yep.
stuff.
Yeah.
I would
Those
never
are
ride a
great.
motorcycle. Like I don't feel
God, no.
that I'd be safe, and I probably wouldn't. Honestly, it's not safe. So I don't think I ever would do that. I probably wouldn't even do like a dirt bike, actual motocross kind of event or whatever. But like the idea of being able to hop on a row of 4 to 8 motorcycles and compete
Mhm.
against everybody there, that's pretty cool. So yeah, I agree with I think what we're all saying that like if arcades want to survive and want their arcades to be part of the primary appeal for people to come, you need to have those things that people can't play at home because there's no good
Incentive.
sense of and there's no
Yeah.
like the footprint at your house would be too big. I actually think that I haven't mentioned I mentioned it quickly, but in more detail, virtual reality I think is a good
Yeah.
opportunity for them too because you know what the last thing a mom wants is 2 kids running back and forth playing a big virtual reality fighter game and they're punching, let's say, and they punch, her lamp. She wouldn't want that, but if she can take him to an arcade where he can play that or whatever, while she sits there drinking a margarita or whatever, like she's gonna probably do that. So
Well,
that I think is a good opportunity for them if they if virtual reality gets good enough to kind of warrant it.
I
Yeah.
think we also touched on, while the biggest draws are always the most interesting kind of big footprint games, I think that's also the challenge, right?
Mhm.
Because those are going to be the hardest to maintain. They take up
Yeah.
the most space, and they probably cost the most money just to acquire.
Yep.
So, that to me is the thing that I really love about an arcade and the thing that I really want to go experience in an arcade. But like Megan said earlier, if you can just pay to have a PlayStation 4 and you can pay probably half of what it costs to have one wave race machine, to have like 3 PlayStation 4s and a library of games, because you can just put one game on one thing, and then when somebody wants to switch it, you just switch the one game between machines. So, it's more cost effective to do business that way.
Mhm.
But so I understand why there's the financial trouble, but I want to ride the wave race machine. I wanted to it, and I don't want Chuck E. Cheese to get on the back of it this time because he messed up my concentration.
Oh
I
no.
just looked it up. So the place at Disney World was called Disney Quest. I couldn't come back to me, but it was called Disney Quest. Still remember when I was a little kid, they had a white water rafting simulator where you basically went into this like room kind of area. It was like $5 a person, so it was like $20 for the thing, but you got to do this big like white. They like basically recreated in their game, the like the river off of Niagara Falls, stuff like that. They would recreate that stuff, and you'd be able to go white water rafting where it's safe for you to be doing it. But like I know, Tom, you had brought the Switch to my house before I had one, and we played the Mario Party equivalent. Imagine actually having a full paddle and like being in front
Oh
of
yeah.
an 86 or 120-inch screen where like the 4 of you are playing. Maybe it's like an open glass thing or something where people can watch you do it, so they're enticed to also do it with their friends, which I think is kind of how it was. You had like glass looking down into the room that the thing was in. um, it's expensive, and the footprint's expensive, and if those games don't exist, then the company that wants that kind of thing is going to have to build it themselves. And I think that's the challenge. But if it just sucks that there's not a like all the game developers have come up with these business models where it's like I dish out a game and people buy it on their PlayStation and that's the end of it. There's no, to my knowledge, arcade companies anymore. People really
Yeah.
building arcades. Almost every arcade game you see is a 20-year-old machine that some
Mhm.
guy is passionate about and is keeping it running.
Well, I think interestingly with the whitewater kind of machine, it just reminded me of being a kid and going to the Field Museum in Chicago with my family, and I remember there was one. They had like a virtual reality machine there that was like a hang glider, and it actually
Oh.
had like a piece that you would lay down on, and then like a bar that you would grip. And the piece that you were laying down on would kind of wiggle the same way that you kind of expect to wiggle, being on your own hang glider, and same with the bar. And it would offer you those kind of views that you would get when you're like soaring over, some sort of open terrain. And I just kind of wonder whether or not those sorts of machines, which are fun, also maybe a little bit educational, but more kind of virtual reality oriented, but with big peripherals, if the destiny of those things is going to be in something like a museum. Because one thing, another experience is going to the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia, where they have a rather large area set up for just kind of like virtual reality sports games. And I don't even know if I would call it virtual reality, because a lot of it uses actual props. But you end up kind of using those in these weird, if you ever watched like Nick Arcade back in the day, where they would kind of green screen you onto something, and you would have to jump around things, sort of that experience. But I don't know. I kind of wonder if that's going to be the real future of the peripheral heavy arcade game.
I don't know. Maybe that'll be what happens.
Yeah, I could see more places opening up for more of like a virtual reality experience. Like there's a local resort here that does some kind of VR experience every so many months. Like they had an underwater thing where you were actually in a pool with a snorkel, but you had on a headset while you were like swimming around with fish and sharks. Or it was like a zombie experience where it was this entire room that would be the parameters of the map. So like the actual wall would be the wall in world, and there was a second level where you would get onto like an elevator and go up, and again it was just the size of the room, which is pretty cool. So I think as that advances, maybe you'll see it more.
Was that all like headset based?
Yeah, headset, and I believe the zombie experience you wore some kind of vest, and you had a gun peripheral that you would carry around and shoot with.
That's
pool was just a headset.
Okay. I mean, that's interesting. I saw something similar on a Vice TV show. Some of you may have seen it before. Most Expensivest, starring 2 Chainz. But he went on a VR experience where they had like a vest and the gun and the VR headset kind of thing in a room. And it seems really cool. I mean, I hope it was really cool, Megan, because it sounds really cool.
No, it was.
But I almost wonder if that also is supplanting arcade games and arcade machines, because again, pay for one set of goggles, load X amount of programs onto it. It's got to be cheaper over time than continuously buying new boxes and machines,
especially with repair.
Exactly, and they're probably more robust. Even if you have someone throwing around in a zombie simulation and they smash their goggles on the ground.
It sounds like, I think we're all saying that the old arcades, the Mrs. Pac or Miss Pac-Man and all those kind of old ones that were single-use games, they're more of a hobby now for people. They're more of like people maybe a couple years older than us, probably closer to like 40, 10 or so years older, are more the people that are gonna keep arcades, if you will, alive. And that's because they have the disposable income and they want to purchase those machines themselves. Sorry, Pinto. They're not coming back.
Oh, I know. It's just like another thing is like the social aspect of it, because we always talk about like we have the most fun when we're playing games together generally, and we're doing that remotely. But like I love couch co-op. Like when Tom was up visiting and we were all playing Mario Party together with Amy Fleming, like we were all having a great time. When I go over to Megan's, which she lives half an hour away, I haven't seen her in person in like 6 months.
COVID.
Yeah, I went and stood on her porch for a half hour the other day.
It was nice.
Oh, that's good.
But like, we play board games together all the time, or we'll play games on the Switch, and I make everyone in the room hate me when we play Smash.
Or you'll watch me yell as I play a scary game in VR.
Yeah, it's like that social aspect is something that I still think is so valuable in games in general.
Yeah.
And arcades were a big part of that because, like I said, you're sitting there, you're playing House of the Dead by yourself. There's a second gun there. Some total complete stranger could walk up and play it with you. And you're
Yeah.
like, awesome, someone's playing a game with me. You don't know each other, but you're still having a good time, you know? The
Yeah.
same thing with the side-scrolling beat-em-ups. You're sitting there by yourself playing it, and like three other people that you don't know can just walk up. You all beat the game together. You're like, "Hey, awesome job, guys!" You high five, and then you go eat pizza. Maybe not together, but like you just have this bonding experience with a stranger because
There were, I
you were
mean,
playing games.
it brings people together, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I can specifically tell you that when I was at that arcade in Portland, you know, my friend Mark and I were there, and we kind of went off on our own. But I was playing this one game, and I kind of like ran out of quarters and had to go get some more from the change machine. But two of the guys that I didn't know that were playing with me were like, "Hey man, don't lose out. Here's some quarters. You know, just keep going." And like they weren't asking me to pay them back or anything.
Yeah.
We were having fun playing the game, and they wanted to keep playing with an extra teammate. So, you know, it was really cool. Like you don't often see that kind of thing at a lot of spots. You know, if you're at a go-kart track, even someone's not giving you $20 to get in the cart with them.
Yeah,
you know?
it was a definite community for sure. Like some of my favorite gaming memories, like at the end of the school year, my dad would take me and my brother to a local place that's now gone called Top Dog, and we would
Oh,
just sit and
Top
play
Dog.
games for like an hour or two. And like rarely did I ever really play games with my dad after a certain point, but it was just like a good memory. Or our local mall, I would sit and play Marvel vs. Capcom 2 with my friend, and we'd unlock Carnage and just, you know, fight each other and fight other people.
Weren't like arcades in random spots a treat too? Like I
Yeah.
always remember going to a movie theater, and if we had time to kill before a movie or after a movie, and you would see like even just a decent machine, right? Like you would see a random Time Crisis, or honestly, even if I saw like Big Buck Hunter, I would get a little
Yeah.
bit excited because just playing some sort of like game for a little bit of time, where you know I could try something new and exciting and flashy and fun out,
Mm-hmm.
while I had nothing else to do.
And it didn't
was
cost
great.
much. You know,
No.
Yeah, a couple bucks, whatever.
big
you know?
game hunter costs like 50 cents or something like that per like effectively life. I guess if you miss your shot, I forget exactly how it works. But you know, you could play it for the 10 minutes you had. And if you end up losing, whatever. It was 50 cents and my movie's starting anyway.
Oh
You
no,
know.
I didn't get the buck. Well, time to go eat popcorn and watch Finding Nemo.
My life is hard.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But I mean, even like ice skating rinks. I remember going ice skating.
Yeah.
Like,
Bowling alleys.
bowling
Yeah.
alleys. And you know, even if they have a retro machine, I mean, I remember being a kid and always preferring the newer games because that's how I was as a kid. But today, if I see Space Invaders, I'm gonna go play freaking
Oh, for
Space
sure.
Invaders, man. Dig Dug. The old Star Wars game was out of that Portland arcade. That was great. Like some pinball is fantastic.
Yeah.
Just absolutely any of those games.
Virtua
They're a
Fighter.
treat. They're a
Yeah.
treat. And I'm just I will one day. It's always been my goal to buy an arcade game for my house. I do think I would like to own Silent Scope 2 Dark Silhouette. But there's been others I've been looking at. There's a company called Arcade One Up actually that builds home arcade machines and sells them through Walmart. So you can buy
Yeah.
a Rampage machine. It's not full scale,
Mm-hmm.
but it's
It's a
pretty
mini
sizable.
cabinet. Yeah.
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 And you can buy a Rampage machine and just have it sitting in your house, or Dig Dug, or you know Galaga, all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, it's really cool. You know, it's not the same social experience, but I don't know. There's just a piece of me that always wants to kind of hug and hold on to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
If we all chip in right now, there's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle arcade game for the low price of $8,900.
Oof.
No, I'll keep saving for my camera lens. I told you guys about.
I have a single dollar in my wallet at the moment.
Hey,
Woo!
anything
That's a
for the
contribution.
cause.
There
Yeah.
you go, man.
The hardest thing really is the cost, because I think there
Yeah.
are a lot of people out there that still have sunk cost into those machines, and they're trying to recoup probably a little bit too much. But I've seen some on eBay go for under $1,000, which I think is pretty reasonable. But the hardest thing is they're always local pickup only, because they're very, very heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to pick those kind of things up yourself, and yeah, I think it's most of them are going to be around $1,000 for a working one.
Mhm.
Some of them, like a Miss Pac-Man that's working, those can go. I don't even know how much they go for anymore.
Too much.
I know that it's one of the rarest games to have. I think it's Miss Pac-Man. It
It's
might be
just
like
Pac-Man with a bow, people.
I know
And
it was a
lipstick.
specific one, and like there was people who would buy I mean, I actually saw this on Pawn Stars earlier, which is hilarious. Like literally a few hours ago, I was watching an episode of Pawn Stars, and they said that people would buy the Pac-Man machine because the internals were all the same as Miss Pac-Man, and then they would like basically try to get the right software installed into the same hardware and then just take off the plate and put the plate on that they bought or whatever and basically convert it into a Miss Pac-Man machine because it was worth more money. So like it was obviously Pawn Stars was going really fast through the whole topic, but yeah, apparently people would do that kind of thing. I think Miss Pac-Man's one of the most valuable arcade games.
I did just find a Silent Scope EX arcade machine on eBay. It is a bid, but it's starting the bidding at $700.
Ooh.
You know what?
So,
That's not bad.
tempting.
With free shipping, of course, right?
No, it's freight shipping that is not listed. But
Yeah,
there's
it will
another
depend on-
one.
You'll have like DPL
Dark's-
deliver that.
There's another one that's Dark Silhouette that's a $1,300 buy it now, which is actually not a bad deal either.
Oh.
But that's also prior to freight shipping. So it's
Yeah, but
probably
your
not
wife would kill you,
100.
man, if you had all these arcades.
She'll let me do it. That's
Okay.
why.
My wife would kill me if I was like, "Hey, I'm going to do all these." The footprint is the problem. Not only for arcade places, but also for normal people. But there are, like we said, 40-year-old-ish men around that age, because just a few years older than us, who actually went to the arcade all the time, played all these games when they were like teenagers. That was their spot. And they don't have kids, and they're like, I'm gonna buy him. The one that I know, he had at least like 8 to 12 machines in his basement. He was like, it's my own personal arcade. Everything's free. He like had a little like bar table-y stool kind of thing going on, and like you could have drinks and stuff. It was really cool.
That's cool.
The kind of thing that he did. So it's for me, it's become more of a hobby-based thing. But there are still Dave and Buster's. I hope they keep doing well. It's a great place for corporate events. My company. Which I prefer not to say for obvious reasons, but my company actually did a sponsored event there for a team building event, and it went
Jimbo's
great.
Steaks. Mike Fleming works for Jimbo's Steaks Incorporated out of Mississauga, Mississippi.
Sounds about right. It's very close. It's cheese steaks, though. Get it right, my friend.
Oh, Mississippi doesn't have cheesesteaks, my friend. It's just Jimbo's Steaks. They add the cheese later in
But
Philadelphia.
yeah, corporate events at those kind of things will keep going. I don't want to see them all go away, and I really hope, and I don't expect places like movie theaters and stuff to get rid of them because they have the space anyway. Why not throw those games in there because they already own the machines or whatever? But that's the other thing too. Sorry, a lot of them will not own the machines directly. Somebody else will own the machines, and they'll offer the location and then split the profits or whatever. So I've seen that happen too, and I bet you a lot of movie theaters do that kind of thing.
Interestingly enough, I actually wonder what will happen to movie theaters, because I personally am reasonably convinced that movie theaters are going to die after COVID-19. So I kind of wonder if there might be a new renaissance of arcades at some point where, they'll strip out some movie theaters and do a little bit more there where you could get some social gaming together. Where maybe they put some larger scale kind of games on a huge screen like that or something like that.
Mini golf, man.
Social
Social
yeah.
distance at its best.
Home or inside mini golf and stuff like that. Yeah.
I would love to go play mini golf right now. I love mini golf.
Same.
I I don't even remember the last time I played mini golf. Was it at your bachelor weekend, Fleming?
I think that was the last time I played mini golf.
No,
God.
I've played it since then, but yeah, it's been 6 years, almost to the day. It was, I think, July of 2014 that we went mini golfing. So if you haven't played since then, yeah. I think I played like a year or two after that, so I'm not quite as long, but I miss mini golfing too. I miss
Yeah.
arcades, I miss mini golfing, I miss the movies. I love the movies. I love popcorn.
I miss
So,
leaving my house.
Me too.
COVID-19. Oh man. What a
Well,
great topic, Pinto.
yeah, thank you for indulging me on that.
Great job.
Great job.
Go support your local arcade.
If you have one.
And
Once
well,
COVID-19 is over.
to that point, you know, Dave and Buster's is a pretty big business. I don't know how much they're worth on the stock market. I know they're a public company. Let's say they're worth $1 billion. That might be totally off, but let's just say $1 billion. Support your local arcades first. You know,
Yeah.
your local places. They need that help, especially after COVID finally lifts and everything. So the price is going to be comparable. You know, it might not be exactly the same, but you're probably going to get better service and better food anyway. So support your local arcade if you're thinking about going to those things. That's Mike Fleming's PSA.
That's my hot take.
Our local arcade turned into a Buffalo Wild Wings.
Well, then go get some wings, man.
At the Viewmont
Oh,
Mall,
yeah.
Megan. Yeah. I wonder, they did recently open up a bar/arcade where we live.
It's not that great.
Okay, you went.
But
All right.
I also went like within the first couple of months of it being open. But like the game selection it's fair, and it's all quarters, and the actual change machines weren't working. So you would have to like chase down like the bartender or like the waitress and be like, hey, can I exchange this $10 bill for quarters? It wasn't, I don't know how it was later on, but it was all right. And I don't like saying that because it's a local place and it's an arcade and I love it, but it could have been a little bit better with the selection of games.
This is Tom chiming in with your financial report of Dave & Buster's net worth. It appears that COVID-19 has not been kind to Dave & Buster's, as it fell from a worth of $1.5 billion at the beginning of the year to roughly $0.38 billion right now. So it's lost.
So 380 million?
Yep.
If we do the math, okay.
Yeah. It's just there in terms of billions, but
Yeah,
yeah,
no, I get it.
that's a huge loss actually.
Yeah,
Patrick
yeah.
Mahomes just signed a contract worth more than what Dave & Buster's is worth.
That is true. Yeah, he did.
This
Yeah, it'll be
is-
interesting to see what survives.
Yeah.
It really will be.
This is Mike Pinto's opinion piece. Stop paying athletes so much. Sorry.
They put their bodies on the line. Hey,
I
whatever
don't care.
you want.
Okay, we are very close to time, and I feel like you guys are going to this massive debate.
It's
We
too
can talk
much
about
money.
sports
No
games
one
and
should
then
make
kind
that
of-
much money.
We'll fight about this on a Tuesday.
Oh,
All
no.
right. Anyways, I think before Tom and I start yelling at each other more, we'll end this podcast. Thank you for listening. Please do all the social media stuff. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at JoyPad Pod. Follow the YouTube channel at JoyPad, where there are many Let's Plays up featuring one and or all of us. Anything else?
Check out our Twitter.
Oh, God. One day we'll do something with that.
Buy an
I'll
arcade
take it
machine
over.
for no reason.
Or buy one for us.
Oh, yeah, donate one to
Yeah.
the group.
Yeah.
We'll take one.
We'll take one. Yeah.
Unexpected philanthropy from our listeners is our favorite form of outreach.
Yeah, but do the stuff. Comment, like, subscribe. Leave us a review if you're into that. Give us some stars. We'd like to, know how we're doing. It doesn't have to be great, but,
It could be one.
Be constructive. Just
Tell
tell
me
Yeah.
how
us what we need to
slappable
work
my
on.
face is. It's fine.
very.
I know it.
All
Or
right.
if you have a topic that you want us to talk about, I don't know, let us know and maybe we'll ignore it or talk about it. We'll see.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea because eventually we're going to start running dry and be like, guys, I don't know what to talk about.
Oh,
Eventually.
don't worry, man. I got a list.
So do
Talk
I.
about athletic salaries, which is very gaming related.
Of course. All right. Well, I think that's about it. So until next week, what do we say?
Stay joyful, everybody.
Ooh.
Goodbye.
That was
Bye.
terrifying. Bye.
Bye.